Rolling.
Good all the time, baby.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another informative hour on the Catch the Sky podcast. As always, it's Saif and T. Tonight, we are going to discuss the latest boogeyman. It's when you take cancel culture and political correctness and you mix those two together, you get critical race theory. T, how the hell are you, buddy? Welcome back.
Well, as a white person, I feel like my existence is completely under attack, right? No, I'm completely kidding in that statement. But there are some people, as you said, that are just going completely off the deep end with this entire thing. And to anybody listening, this is going to be an informative chat, but it probably won't be an entire hour. But who knows? We've had some episodes that have gone well over that. Welcome back.
You never know with us.
Yeah, right. So thank you again for tuning in. This is the Catch the Sky podcast. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for the Catch the Sky podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at CTS Terry or at CTS Saif. We're also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all over the place.
I think it is so important to define what we're going to discuss because what I'm hearing is everybody has a different interpretation on what critical race theory is. So it's important for you and I to establish some type of working definition. I'd actually be curious to know what you think the definition is. Yes, I just put you on the spot.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm prepared. It's telling the historical narrative that fairly projects what happened to each race. It's like, I think that I told you this in our conversations off air. The novel by Howard Zinn, The People's History of the United States, is written from the perspective of the losers, right? Yeah. And so I don't want to say that in a negative connotation, but we know that history is written by the quote-unquote winners. And so critical race theory is kind of pushing back on that and saying, you know what? No, it's time that we include all the facts. And slaves weren't brought over here to help people. They were kidnapped and taken against their will and forced into labor with the other option being violence. Yeah, they weren't.
They were goods. Yeah.
Yeah.
People were goods. People are capital.
But the verbiage that's used in our history books makes it seem like they were assisting us in our industrial progression. And although we did grow during that time, that's
mightily.
Yeah, it's no. You can't be doing that. So.
Yeah, I think in my conversations around this subject, I think everyone can agree, and you and I will agree, and I think most of our listeners would agree that slavery was a bad thing.
Yeah.
Can we come to a consensus on that? Now,
yeah.
As we know, or as we're taught, is post-Civil War.
Mr.
Now
Slave.
We're entering into
Mr. Slave is the only slave that I tolerate, to be clear.
Is this a South Park reference?
Yes, sir. Hey, you're catching on, buddy. You're catching on.
It's either The Office, South Park, or Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's either one of those three. It's only taking me a year.
Pick a card. I'm gonna hit you with something. I'm gonna hit you with something different one of these days. You're gonna catch that too, though. Don't worry.
You subtly dropped. I was listening to last week's episode, and you put an Always Sunny reference in there that I didn't catch, and I kind of rolled right over.
Oh yeah, I'm always doing it. I'm not always gonna tell you. I'm not going to make it that easy.
I completely blew right past it. I think it's just a reminder for me, that we can always slow down our conversations. I think listening to actually some past conversations, I noticed that we talk to our guests and we tell them we can edit things, but we don't ever go back and edit.
Right.
So that's part of us doing it live. So yes, slavery, bad thing.
Bad.
We can understand that people are still capital. And I mean, we went from paying $0 to a working minimum wage. I think at the federal level, in some instances, depending on who's president, I think it's like $7 or $8, and people are still freaking out about that.
Working minimum wage. What's considered a working minimum wage, Dave?
Or you mean livable or workable?
Well, yeah. So that's what I'm getting at now. So what is workable? Well, that's what I'm asking. What does that word mean?
Anytime we enter into this conversation, I always like to remind anybody I'm speaking with that it is possible to work a full-time job and still be poor and still live in abject poverty. And we were talking about real estate earlier.
Well, isn't it true that
it's impossible to pay rent and live right now?
If you had a minimum wage job, full-time, 40 hours a week, I do not believe that you can afford a one-bedroom apartment anywhere in the country anymore. Anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
An apartment, bro. What the But
when you and critical race ties into this, because when you talk about wage increases, you can look historically at how narratives around wage increases have been shaped around race specifically, and that's part of critical race theory that people don't want to talk about. They don't want you to have a conversation where, if you look back historically, you'll note that there was a concerted effort to make sure that people of color were paid less. And as we've just discussed, they were paid nothing. And so that effort continued post-Civil War. And even to this current day, there are still discrepancies in pay. People are familiar with pay gaps between women, and maybe that's a question about equality and equity.
We talked about this. We talked about this on the Women's Voices episode. Did we not?
It's all a blur at this point.
I was going to say, you don't remember shit. You sound like me now. You sound like me. How's it feel? She was on the other
You know what it is? It's I feel bad, and I'm going to say this specifically to my father. And so, Dad, I'm talking to you, even though you don't listen to this podcast.
Yeah, nobody
I
gives
am
a fuck
so
about
sorry. I am so sorry that we constantly badger you with the question, do you remember? Because I'm sure there's a lot more things going on inside your 75-year-old brain, and you can't be responsible for every possible facet and fact. And I'm learning quickly that nor can I. And I'm learning to loathe that question. Like, do you remember? Because it's like, sure, I do. I just, number one, I need another minute. At least. And I need context. I need additional.
Well, that's why I told you the Women's Voices episode with Dick.
Where is Dick, by the way?
She's building our studio. Speaking of free labor. we got.
I'm sure she's offering cheese sandwiches and plenty of breaks for her hired labor.
Oh, I thought she was building it herself for us.
Yeah. I mean, I don't always like to divulge, what Dick is up to. But I will say the Dick Francisco household are big fans of the podcast, so they'll end up listening to this. But I think for those fans, I think it's equity. They're talking about the building of the casita here in the Arizona market, and for those listeners who don't speak Spanish, that's a tiny house.
It's a she-shed.
Yes,
studio.
and building that extra room, you're adding equity, you're adding value to your home.
Now, is it attached?
And that's a good thing
to the home.
No, it's a separate. So, and then you can always turn those things and yes, and shower.
Whoa.
That's why I was like, you should live there, but you can't.
Why?
I think it's going to be occupied.
Well, damn it. I got to talk to Dick. I got to talk to Dick about this ASAP. That sounds, dude. if it's gonna come with studio area. Oh, you're talking it's gonna be like a studio, like apartment, not like a studio.
No. A studio where our hopefully our podcast might move, or Dick might change the format and demand that we clean this up and make this a more palatable show.
Well, I want to make some shirts. I have some serious shirt ideas. I don't know if
Dick's
you read
all
my
in on
text.
the shirt ideas.
Yeah, I don't know if you read my text, but I want to get those cranked out like as soon as I get down to Arizona. Like whether we do it through a local vendor, online, whatever. We need to get them.
I foresee weekend garage sales and us selling those T-shirts.
Always be coming. Always be coming.
Coffees for closers.
B C trademark. Catch the Sky podcast.
Boom. Take that trademark. That means we got dibs.
It's on. It is on. I love it. I think we trademarked it in the last episode too. But getting back to
Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan will get it.
No. That's why we're gonna fucking crank out our shirts ASAP. We're getting this one. We're not fucking missing out on this. So, but before we get way too far off on our own fucking tangent, let's get back to
define it.
It's
going to be an hour-long episode. It's official.
Yeah.
We're completely off the rails here.
Let's get back to basics here.
Define the term.
What, critical race theory?
Yeah.
I mean,
I liked your definition. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought I already told you. I thought I told you already. It's telling the whole historical narrative and not just the favorable one for white people, because that's pretty much what we have. I'm gonna candidly say it that's the one that we have. Some people are gonna say, oh, it's this, that, whatever. It's the one that makes white people look good. We're still talking about Christopher Columbus. The fuck? Vikings were here before that. Get over it.
What I find interesting about Mr. Columbus is, yes, we're still having the discussion, but again, depending on who you talk to, I was always taught he was a fine man, but as I've gotten older, I found out more things about him that are particularly troubling. Some instances indicate that there was the selling off of young women.
Can we just talk,
as sexual property?
Yeah, him, Thomas Jefferson. Like, can we just talk about how,
like,
basically
#save our children?
Yeah,
but not from Christopher Columbus, because we don't want to inject critical race theory into history, right? And so I think that's
#save our children, basically from like everybody up until like fucking like 19 like what, like 05 or something. Like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, well, I mean, it's still ongoing, but it's...
Matt Gaetz is pretty much a pedophile. I mean, she's 17. I can't say.
Oh, yeah. The Drain the Swamp guy.
I think he went to her high school.
The Drain the Swamp guy. Yeah, remember that? Remember he's our boy.
He also challenged...
God, I could fucking skull fuck him fucking sideways with a lunchbox, dude. Fuck him.
It is particularly problematic to me that there are people who are... Actually, convictions are occurring regarding his behavior with minors. And these are real prosecutions. But, of course, they live in an alternative reality. And so 40% of the population no longer believes anything, right? And so Tom Brady makes this joke on the White House lawn as he's hanging out with Joe Biden, because he says 40% of the people don't believe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl. I thought it was hilarious. He's making a joke about the election. But we do have an alternative narrative for everything now. And so part of that is to fight back against the telling of history, or the telling of anything that will make one particular side look bad or feel bad, I think is what indication, or just not proud of their heritage. And I think we can all agree that slavery was a bad thing, and where nobody's blaming anybody for slavery, because there's a lot of parties involved. So there were tribes in Africa who were directly responsible for this trade as well. There was a willing trade going on, a willing bartering happening of people. People were commodities, right? But we need to be able to have a robust conversation. And it's not so simple. And I think everybody's attention span is so short that they're not willing to have a robust conversation about anything. And they just want to assume that there are only two sides to every story, which there are multiple facets to every story and every piece of history or every version of events. And I think it's important to have all those narratives shared.
We don't have enough time in history class for all that, Saif. That's the retort.
Isn't that it, isn't it? But this is critical race theory is nothing new. So they've been battling over which versions of textbooks will actually be used in the classroom. And the biggest states that have the influence are Texas and California. And often the difference between a California textbook and a Texas textbook, those are completely different narratives, but Texas likes to exclude parts of history that might be beneficial to people who are non-white.
Weren't they both
telling
in the
those stories?
Confederacy?
Telling those no. California, no. I don't know if California existed.
Hey Google,
when did California become a state?
California was granted statehood on the 9th of September 1850.
Oh, maybe they were involved.
That's what I'm saying. I'm very sure they were in the South.
I know that there was a war fought in Arizona, one Civil War battle. It was at Picacho Peak. And
callback. This is on an earlier episode. I don't know which episode it was, but this is it.
Did we get into Picacho?
Yeah,
it was one of the scarier hikes I've been on.
You just mentioned it, but go on. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. No, but I don't know anything about California. I just know because my recent visit to the Simi Valley area near Thomas Aquinas College and visited the Reagan Library and the Nixon Library, which were two places on my list. I cleansed myself in the beach and let the water hit me and cover away all my filth and sins so I could ready myself for my new partner. So
you sound
all
like
that
Malibu, the American Gladiator, after he got blasted by the human cannonball off of the pedestal. Have you ever fucking seen that interview?
I think you should tag it on the Instagram, but
I'm absolutely
am a huge American Gladiator fan.
So you know who I'm talking about, right? Malibu.
Gemini, Nitro, Lace.
Dude, Malibu was in... Dude, he had another role.
Lace.
He had a role in this fucking board game. This board game called Dragon Strike was basically a D&D knockoff. And it came with a VHS like instructional video, but it was part instructional video and like part movie. And Malibu played like the warrior in this movie, and it was fucking hilarious, bro. But after he gets
true story, go ahead. No, please, no. But you're clearly into the.
but if you go online and check out our Instagram and Facebook page, and I'll put it on Twitter as well. In this interview, he gets blasted, and then they show him talking to the host or whatever, like weeks later, and he's like, "Man, I took the most excellent hit, and next thing I knew, I was on the beach with some brews in one hand, babes in the other, taking in some cosmic rays." Just getting healed by Mother Nature. So when you said that, that's immediately what I thought of.
I saw American Gladiators live as they went and toured the country at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, Arizona, what used to be known as the Madhouse on McDowell, where the Phoenix Suns used to play, and now is a concert venue during the state fair time. But we had front row tickets, and Nitro picked up a girl a few rows behind us and got her phone number. And I'm sure he crushed it because Nitro was a good looking dude.
Yeah, they all were. I mean, they were American Gladiators.
They were great. I love the gauntlet at the end, and then the where they were like human gerbils and they were in the big ball.
Oh, bro.
But
that's the best.
It seemed really difficult.
Like, is that show still on? Didn't The Rock bring it back?
They're bringing everything back. They're redoing Wonder Years, which I am very excited about with Don Cheadle. And I'm I'm all in because I was a big Fred Savage fan, still am. And Fred Savage, as you know, is involved with one of our favorite television shows.
Yeah. I'm pumped about that. I want to talk more about the hamster balls. I want to talk about the human hamster balls. If there's any
as
way
it relates
that
to critical race theory, let's talk about Gemini specifically.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
That's an American Gladiators joke for people who don't know.
Oh my god. Jesus God. All right, yeah, let's get back on track here.
So we were talking about Zinn earlier, and so the counter to Zinn is the Patriots History of the United States. So Larry Schwelkert and Michael Allen, I think they're one from University of Colorado. I think Michigan is the other. I could be wrong that one. I apologize if we got that wrong, but whatever, it doesn't matter. But there's all these counter narratives. We're constantly fighting over which version of history to tell. And a lot of people don't. What I see happening is by passing laws against the teaching of anything, to me amounts to censorship. To me is cancel culture. To me is we just want to censor debate. We want to burn books. And I don't think that is healthy from a free speech point of view. Let's have the most robust dialogue. No, they just want to stop the debate. They want to stop the discussion and prevent you from actually sharing something that might be counter to the preferred narrative of dominant culture. And that's what we're seeing. I still don't think we have a working definition, by the way.
we're like only 20 minutes in.
I think that one of the simpler explanations, because this does have critical race theory does have a history. Derek Bell is considered the father, 1970s, university professor at Harvard, and it specifically looks at how law and race intersect and how race and slavery continue to influence this process today. And so Bell wrote a book called Race, Racism, and American Law.
Does this tie into like the 13th Amendment?
I can't say. I haven't read the book.
Well, did you watch the documentary 13 when it came out?
Yes. If you're referring that, then yes.
Yeah.
Then I think that is a good example.
There we go.
Yeah.
We got all sorts of source material here, people. So just get on it. All right.
But
this is nothing
I like
new.
to remind people. Yeah, we when you look at criminal justice reform, which is something you and I talked about early on our podcast, we've still yet to do an episode on criminal.
About it.
Right. But Republicans came around and they passed criminal justice reform. I'm referring specifically to when Kanye West visited the White House with Kim Kardashian. That's when we learned that his password was 0000 because he was there as a proponent of criminal justice reform. And then as in Trump's address to the nation, State of the Union speech, he touted his criminal
password.
Who knows?
Or do you think he's
Kanye
so
can do whatever he
cocky
wants
that he just left it?
He's an artist. The man is an artist.
We're artists.
We are.
I've had the same passcode for like ever. So if anybody knows it, I'm fucked.
I think sometimes you just got to open your phone and you got to do it quickly. And I get it. But the point I'm trying to make is that the president, Donald Trump, in a State of the Union speech, when touting criminal justice reform, noted that the incarceration of blacks over whites, the mass incarceration of blacks, which the 13th Amendment addresses, was not okay. And that we needed to end our troubled past. Like, so he brings up these things, but then he also passes executive measures to not teach critical race theory. So that there's this counter there. It's like people want to ignore the discrepancies in law enforcement and targeting of minorities and how that has led to more people of color incarcerated in this country, even though they're less than the population. They'll say, oh, there's statistics that say black people commit more crime. And in reality, I think I like to always cite Rand Paul Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, where he notes that black people and white people smoke drugs the same, yet black people are incarcerated more for smoking drugs at a higher level. And that's not okay, right? And so that would be, when you're talking about critical race theory, how race is used, because the police have been used historically as a state-sponsored terrorism, and that's what it's been. Like they were purposely used to go out and, in conjunction with the Ku Klux Klan or other white supremacist groups, and target black people. And everybody would say, well, everybody's not Bull Connor, but Bull Connor existed. And if you don't know who Bull Connor is, it's an important figure. Like, I think you need to understand how these things happen and are still occurring. That's why Ferguson, Missouri was cleaned up, because their law enforcement department had rampant abuse. And it's not the same city to city, coast to coast, as me and my buddy Manny will argue. He lives comfortably in Surprise, Arizona. And, he has a different interaction with law enforcement, but it's a different story in South Phoenix, as it probably is to Erie, Pennsylvania, and parts of the South. Not every law enforcement department is the same, and not every police officer is a horrible person.
But you're saying
there is
that some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses? Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, that's
None of this
absolutely
is
true.
new, people. What? And that's what
But
I'm
they don't.
trying
But that's
to say.
not a part of. But that's not a part of history that was taught. It was never taught to me in my Arizona curriculum, my K-12, and this is all stuff I learned later through people like Howard Zinn.
Yeah. So.
Or Rage Against the Machine.
So.
I always find.
Yeah. So what do we do? What do we do? Do we just is it on every individual's? Is it on them to educate themselves about the world? Is this why people choose to homeschool their kids? I'm starting to get it now.
Well, I just wish people would maybe read more or go in depth more, or maybe just not believe every YouTube video that they pass along. Whether it's misinformation, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congresswoman from, I think, Florida or wherever, I forget where she's from, but she got banned from Twitter again, for spreading misinformation. I think it's easy if you're willing to just lie through your teeth to kind of get what you want. And if you're looking at
being
Aristotle,
a politician is.
Well, Aristotle, when you look at rhetoric or the rhetorical triangle, sophists, yeah, they would use techniques to be more persuasive, and often they entailed being just lying. And if you're okay with lying, which I would say people who spread misinformation, I always say, it's both ways, conservatives, and if we're going to do it politically, people are always willing to lie by omission or lie. But I would say right now at this juncture in history, like Donald Trump has proven, and people who follow Donald Trump, they just completely bought into every lie, starting with Barack Obama's birth certificate to the stealing of the election, and ultimately led people to storm the Capitol based on a lie. And the propaganda continues, and it's often festered through Russian or Chinese sources. It's out of control, and I just wish people were a little bit more grounded in their belief system. We're willing to do a little bit more homework. Yeah.
No,
I don't know what to say with all that. And that's with critical race theory. This whole thing is a mess. Like, it's a boogeyman. It is not even a real thing, critical race theory. It's just a made up thing to counter Black Lives Matter.
Whole thing sucks, unfortunately, and it's like, and we have states passing measures to make sure that it doesn't get taught.
To censor.
Yeah.
Ultimately, states are saying you cannot teach certain things, right?
Oh, great. We're burning
and
books.
That is censorship. That is cancel culture.
We're burning books.
Then it's cancel culture that they're okay with, right? They're okay with canceling Nike, the Dixie Chicks, right? We've talked about this.
They're the chicks.
But when they canceled them, they were the Dixie Chicks.
But then
because they spoke out against the war in Iraq, and you could not speak out. That was problematic because we were worried about Al Qaeda. We needed to be united.
Well,
and now we're done with Al Qaeda, so we need another boogeyman. Critical race theory. Let's go.
God. We just really hate ourselves, don't we?
I think people are easily. the argument that we're sheep, right? Sheeple. It's very easy to persuade a large group of populations that that there's an existential threat of something horrible and that we all need to be fearful of. And I think the best way around that is build your community, talk to your neighbor, learn that everybody's not the boogeyman.
I am the boogeyman, though.
I do have a friend from high school, and she always likes to remind me, that I'm like the first Middle Eastern person that she's ever had the pleasure of meeting. And I realized that I am a lot of that to a lot of people. Like they would just assume all Middle Eastern people are towel heads or camel jockeys and whatnot, and they can't even spell my name right half the time or understand it. They're always perturbed. But I am a pioneer. I'm the first Middle Eastern person that a lot of people have met when I was an adolescent growing up, and hopefully helped change people's perceptions for the better. But 9/11 is tough to overcome.
I think you've had a positive impact on me so far.
Am I the first Arab you've ever met?
Trying to think. Met? No. Met? No.
Are there any Arabs in Erie, Pennsylvania?
No, yeah, there are. Met? No, but I'm trying to think if there's anybody off the top of my head that I would...
There are falafel stand in Erie?
Trying to think.
Where do you go for hummus in Erie, Pennsylvania?
I don't eat hummus.
Well, you're going to start now. That's what we eat every day.
No, but you're going to have to utilize that slow cooker. You're going to have to teach me how to I'm going to be living off that thing, bro. I'm really excited for that. So we're going to have that thing running all the time, basically. I'm going to just dump meat into it constantly.
Don't forget the vegetables.
Well, yeah, there'll be that too. Yeah, show me how to do it. And now, before we get into our favorite recipes from Grandma.
We're more into noodles. We're more into noodles these days.
Jesus. What else did you want to hit on with this subject? I mean,
no, I think I'm finding that people that bring this up to me, either through text message or conversations that I've had, this reeks of cancel culture and political correctness. It's a manufactured crisis, and it's meant to divide. And I really wish people would be open to the idea that there are other narratives, and it's okay to talk about those things. Yeah.
Well, yeah. We talked about cancel culture several episodes ago, so it seems like it's, just under that same umbrella. So if there's nothing else, then let's call it a wrap. See, I told you it wouldn't be an hour, people.
Yeah, I think it won't be an hour, no. But I hope we don't get into a situation where we can no longer talk about racism, because whether you want, if you think critical race theory is a real thing and you're afraid of talking about racism, I would ask yourself why. What is it about race that, and we can get into social construction of race as an ideology and who's responsible for all of this, and rulings and court systems, where race needed to be determined for the purposes of issuing rulings. So if people are unaware of this, then it's time to revisit history. Like, there's more to the United States history than Columbus, the Civil War, and the Civil Rights Movement. Like, there's so much more. And we can recommend both the Patriots Guide to History and A People's Guide to the History of the United States. All great books.
Asking elderly Japanese person what it was. Well, there's probably not many left. What it was like during the 40s.
There is a memorial in Arizona. It is called the Poston Memorial, and that is located in Parker, Arizona. So if you were traveling along Interstate 10 and you were to head north towards Lake Havasu, you would run into Parker. And the Poston Memorial commemorates where 17,867 persons of Japanese ancestry, most of them who are Americans, were subjugated, were incarcerated, had their rights They were forcibly, where they were viewed as a threat, and so as a result, we did this. This is part of our history. Like, why did you do this? Like, you can't say that race doesn't play a factor into this, right? But if you want to deny that racism exists and deny your own history of interning Japanese Americans, then I think that's problematic. I think that's cancel culture. I think that's censorship. I think that's burning books, and I don't stand for that. So if you're in Arizona, go check out the Poston Memorial there in Parker, Arizona, and commemorate some Japanese people.
Thank you to any Asian Americans listening out there for your contributions to our culture, this great American experiment. And not only them, but people of any race. We love people of all races on this on this show. And I think that's obvious.
Including alien.
Yes, including aliens. Yeah. So if you guys want to come down and probe me or abduct me, I mean, yeah, I would prefer to just be abducted. But I mean, if probing is part of the whole routine, then I guess, I got to sign a waiver or whatever. That's fine. But just let's do this thing. Beam me up. I think that might be the only reason that we might miss an episode of the podcast is if I get beamed up. In which case, you need to be able to get into my computer and dig into the archives and find something to post until I get back.
Can't wait to meet this computer.
You've seen it. It's the one I bring down every time.
I don't remember.
Don't you remember?
It all comes back.
Right.
No, I don't fucking remember.
I know. I'm just kidding. That's the question you hate. So
I got too much going on in this brain.
Right. So thank you for tuning into this episode of the Catch the Sky podcast. We appreciate you listening, as always, everybody around the world. If you care to interact with us on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, you may search for the Catch the Sky podcast. You can find us on Twitter at CTS Terry or at CTS Saif. And until next week, keep trying to catch the sky.